Good morning, everyone. Another beautiful
早上
Sunday.
好，
Happy Father's Day.
父亲节快乐。
Let me know now my head a bit. Okay. I'm too tall, that's why.
OK， 这边呢也跟我们线上的朋友打个招呼，大家早上好，父亲节快乐。刚才呢我已经提醒了大家，因为是父亲节哈，所以大家呢可以把父亲节的祝语就写下来，然后呢我们会帮你们念出寄语。
Just like the banner now in front, the 九件 say, 大家早上好，父亲节快乐。
哇、wow, ，high technology 啊，糟糕了！现在讲什么要非常小心啊。
Okay, now instead of saying 父亲节快乐 then we can say 九件早上好快乐。
你们也可以说岳父快乐。
Oh yeah. Happy Father-in-Law's Day also.
对吧？有一些有岳父的也算是爸爸啦，哈，对不对？啊，那大家可以一起庆祝哈。
You're the father to my wife, to your wife.
I am the father to my plants.
In actual fact, you are the father to many children because students consider their teacher 嘛，一生为师，终身为父。为
父哈，说的对，说的好啊。
See my wife clapping from a distance already.
From a distance, my wife is clapping for me. 真的，我在一些家庭里面哈，我跟我学生讲的话，未必是他们的父亲会跟他们说的。就作为一个老师，所以我觉得有时候，作为一个老师的这个位置也蛮奇妙的。甚至有一些家长，有一些朋友啊，他们就是有时候碰到孩子有什么问题哈，第一时间会打电话跟我分享孩子的一些问题啦、无奈啦等等的。那我当然就是作为一个老师，有机会的话，我会跟这些孩子们就是语重心长的说一说。
you shake a bit head more, I think I'll get very giddy.
对，我会这样子。Once upon a time， 今天呢，不要忘了我们有特别嘉宾，而且这位特别嘉宾呢，他今天不是在澳洲，他去了纽西兰。哎呀，好羡慕啊！他是 Dr Olivia， 那待会儿呢他会上场。那今天呢也是 Dr Olivia 的最后一期。
Yep. So we'll be inviting Dr. Olivia on shortly, and like what Jutian mentioned, she's not currently in Australia, she's actually in New Zealand, so she should be sharing her insight as well. So let's welcome Dr. Olivia. Yay, welcome.
Hi, good morning everyone.
All the way from New Zealand. I always like to use the word all the way from, because nowadays we are all confined in our own country. Oh, lucky you. How can you be so lucky?
It's we have a bubble between Australia and New Zealand, so it didn't have to quarantine or anything like that, which is fantastic. So it's the first time I've been overseas in 1.5 years.
So when was that made, actually, that bubble? When was that bubble made?
Recent, sort of within the last 2 months, I think it was.
Oh, so once you got the news, immediately you decided to, I'm coming New Zealand.
Yeah, so a friend of mine actually sorted out this trip, so I'm just here along for the ride.
I see. Have you been to New Zealand?
Yes, so this will be the third time that I've been to Queenstown. We were actually here to go skiing, but there's no snow, so oh well, it's fine.
Maybe next few days you will snow.
No, I think that global warming or changing climate patterns or whatever it is, they've had to push back the opening of the ski slopes for about, I think, maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks. So it depends.
Ooh.
So it's winter but no snow, and it's very cold.
Yeah.
大家看到 Dr. Olivia 穿的那个毛衣啊，会很很羡慕。我们这边是大热天。
Yeah, I already unbuttoned because here very hot. It's a different type of
Singapore
climate.
is either raining or hot sun.
It's either raining or raining.
Raining or raining.
No snow here.
No.
Okay. So we have our guest, and Alice say hello, Dr. Olivia. Happy to hear you sharing again.
Hi, Alice.
Yeah, you have more fans coming in to say hi to you. Yeah.
还有秀丽啦。
Yep. Where's Xiuli? Oh, Xiuli say good morning. Yeah.
对，还有钟明。我们先就跟大家就是报道一下了哈，就是他们的祝语呢，待会儿我们再说。钟明啦，还有乐玲啦，还有燕子啦，早上好，早上好。还有 Candy Wong， 还有 K Chen Grace。Good morning, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, great.
乐玲说：“所有在线的爸爸，父亲节快乐。” OK。好。我们念祝语之前呢，我们今天要聊什么话题
？Okay, our topic for today is about if what you're doing is not getting you the result that you want, change the way you go about doing it. So most of the time we may encounter certain situations that we try very hard in order to go about getting the result, but you're banging against the wall. I remember there was a video about this guy, this group of people queuing up to go to the toilet. So one guy came along and he tried to push the guy away, say you should be back queuing up in the toilet. Then he keep on pushing the guy away. Finally, the guy got so irritated, he went right in front to the door and bring the door away. It seems that the whole group of guys were queuing against a wooden door, didn't realize that it's actually a fake door, but it's not to a toilet.
Right.
OK， 所以中文的那个部分呢，我就把它设为一个主题，叫做华丽转身破茧而出。华丽转身呢 ，in English to translate it is glamorously turn around. Chinese we have a very beautiful word. When you reach a certain stage, you think you cannot go on anymore, you should just glamorously turn around. Usually for artists lah. Usually we meant for performer or artists. Even when you turn around or you go down stage, you leave the stage, you have to leave glamorously.
So even if you fall off the stage, even if you fall off the stage,
glamorously.
Yeah, you will pose in a very nice pose.
Yeah, fall with a pose. So that's what Dr. Olivia is going to chat with us. 就是不要太坚持了，有些事情觉得应该改变的时候就要改变。So why actually Dr. Olivia thought of this topic today? Is it because of COVID-19 that people is facing a lot of changes?
It's because I share the topic title.
I was going to say, I was told to do this topic. No, look, it is an important one because humans are pattern-seeking animals. We are animals that thrive with routine and schedules, and therefore anybody who steps outside of this paradigm that we've set up for ourselves evolutionarily is considered, outside the grain. They're rogue or whatever. So, with myself, for example, I practice medicine non-conventionally, which in and of itself, people already think, oh, something wrong with it, or it's alternative, or it's, like it's already got all these black strokes against it because it's not what everyone else is doing. But when I was practicing medicine like everybody else, I could see that there were flaws, there were voids. There were things that my patients couldn't quite access, that I wasn't able to fulfill their needs in a way that made sense to them. And so that's why I decided to practice medicine differently. It's not right. It's not wrong. There is no, ethical stance to this. It's just different. But because people in Australia, I don't know so much about in Singapore, but in Australia we have something called the tall poppy syndrome, where a tall poppy syndrome is where a poppy flower that grows sticks out from the grass, for example. And in Australia, when someone does that, puts their neck out, puts their head out, does something slightly different, we try to cut them down. So we will criticize someone for doing something differently because it's different, as opposed to going, either minding your own business, it's someone else, or if, are they safe? They're safe. Okay, well, what's it to do with me? It's quite obvious here that when you do something differently, people don't ask you why you're doing it differently. People don't ask, are you getting results because you're doing it differently? People don't ask, is there a void with, in my case, patient care? Is there something that patients need? How can I change my own practice? All these other questions that should be coming before, don't do that. That's different, and therefore they don't say wrong either, but it's different, therefore shouldn't be. It's just, anyway, there are lots of opportunities in our life for us to consider, is doing things differently going to benefit us somehow?
Okay, here I did saw one explanation about cutting the top poppy.
Tall poppy, yeah.
Yeah, a tall poppy, yeah, cutting down the tall poppy. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So, the most obvious way, sorry, that was a plane. The most obvious reason why one would try to do things differently is because, it's the way we're doing things now isn't getting us to where we would like to be. Therefore, and as I think it's Einstein that said this, but the definition of insanity is to do things the same way over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But at some point you have to take responsibility for what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're interacting with, who you're spending your time with, what you're reading. Nice one, Nathaniel. You have to start taking responsibility because only you are living your life. You can blame your parents, you can blame your genes, you can blame your education, your job, whatever it is. But unless you start figuring out a different path, even if it's the wrong path, you know that you're going down the same road. You might as well make a mistake, at least do something differently. Even if it's falling off the stage, as you said before, falling off the stage is a different path, but at least you learn from it.
而且，那你说，
你说先。
而且很多时候，我觉得 whether it's a right path or wrong path, I think if you choose the path, I always had a saying: if you really put in all your passion in that path that you believe, at the end, the wrong path that other people look at it, it will become the right path for yourself.
For you, yeah.
And that actually happens a lot of time. 就是我们自己觉得我们选择了一条路，可是有的人他们看起来就是错的。可是如果你很坚持的一直努力下去的话，飞机飞过了。
Sorry.
It's all right.
That's all about holiday. That's all about it's okay. That's all about holiday. 那很多时候呢，你的坚持可能会就是会改变别人的眼光跟最初的想法，那就完全是靠你自己。It all depends on yourself.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you look at right or wrong path, it's quite interesting when you look at it that way. Because about a few weeks, I think the week before last, we talked about the concept about there are no failures, only feedback. So if you look at the basis of some people who develop business, they go through different challenges in life, and each of their individual challenges and issues became feedback for them to move on to a better outcome that they want to. Of course, in between when they are going through the challenges is quite challenging if you look at it that way. And ultimately, once you're able to look forward and like what Jiu mentioned about being passionate about what you want, no matter where it goes through, it will lead you towards the direction that you want to be it helping people, creating beautiful songs, or just simply loving animals. That could be something too.
Yeah.
And I think that, it also depends on expectations. If you pin success and happiness on money, then you'll always be chasing, right?
Yeah.
And that's why meditation is very important, because it helps you be present. It helps you appreciate what you have now. And those are far more important, I believe, far more important aspects to living life than money, because I think most of us have been in a situation where we haven't had money, and most of us have been in a situation where at some point we have been comfortable enough that we haven't had to really worry. And at the end of the day, I think anyway, my happiness hasn't actually improved from having no money to having some money or having lots of money. Your problems are different. Your problems even may be bigger with money. There's no doubt that having money troubles is a big source of anxiety. But that is not so much about how much you have, but it's how you're using it, how you're budgeting. So,
right.
So
这边
you know,
刚才我们讲了就是 cutting the tall poppy， 中名呢，他就说中文有一句话就是叫做强打出头鸟。In Chinese saying there's like, we don't use the flower, the poppy flower as we use the bird's head. And
So
then
when the head
we'll,
pop up, you whack it.
yeah, we'll whack the head. There's a game also, right? In the game arcade,
whack-a-mole.
something pop up. Yeah, then you can
Yeah,
just hit
whack-a-mole,
it.
Whack-a-mole, yeah.
Yeah.
所以中文叫做强打出头鸟。Yeah.
强打出头
出头鸟。
Yeah.
出头 actually 出头 means stick out, but in another meaning it can be something like sometimes it might be something it might be doing something right.
Oh, okay.
At the end. 因为中文我们有一句话叫做人有一天会出头啦，或者是出头天啦。You know, it's actually something. It's a compliment. Yeah. So sometimes if you are too, it's very common. Some people they are too, how do you say? 太突出了。Some
prominent.
Yeah, they're very prominent. You know, some smart people, they are too prominent, and then people are just thinking want to just, whack them. Shut up.
Yeah. Because when someone else is excelling, there's two ways to look at it: as an absolute thing, like that person is excelling, or a ratio compared to us. If they're excelling, it highlights the fact that we're not, or that we're not as good, we're not as clever, we're not as pretty, we're not as smart, we're not as this, we're not as that. And that goes back to the meditation thing, where you need to be happy in your own skin, because there's always going to be someone better than you at something.
Yeah.
I think that, going back to the theme of today's show, it's about, first of all, recognizing that, do you even have goals? Some people don't. And I am experiencing this more and more, whereby someone gets a good job or gets a job, whatever it may be, and they get a mortgage and they work to pay off their mortgage. And then on Friday and Saturday nights, they go out for dinner. And then they wake up on Monday and they do it all again. And then 1 week becomes 2, becomes 12, becomes 6 years. And you're not actually, you're on a road, but the road's not going anywhere. It's just going round and round in circles. Now, interestingly enough, is that a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, some people are absolutely driven and motivated, and they want to, they have these lofty goals that they want to attain, and cure world hunger or whatever it is. I mean, but at the end of the day, those are things that society has said makes you more valuable. But does it? Just if you're conscientious and you're doing the right thing by you and your family, we shouldn't be punishing people for not having these lofty goals. You've got to do what's right for you. Anyway, so even just having goals, whatever they may be, is something that you have to even consider in the first place. Do you have it? Do you want it?
Yeah.
Then, if you do have these things you want to attain, and the path that you're going down doesn't quite get you what it is that you want to attain, whether it's a better job or a better relationship, that's when you need to start considering, is this me? Or how can I change things so that in 2 years' time, when I still haven't attained it, I can at least say, you know what, I tried. A lot of people, want to go down that path of least resistance. Oh, Nathaniel, that slide.
Which the one with the okay, let me just switch over to the slide.
Tony Robbins, yeah.
Tony Robinson, is it? Okay,
Yes.
let me just
so,
share
most people go down the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is the path that doesn't take much for you to do. So if you went to university and you studied to be an engineer, even though you hated engineering, you don't want to be an engineer, it's the easiest thing for you to get a job as an engineer and to even make really good money from it. So if you go down this path of doing engineering because that's what your degree is, that is the path of least resistance. But is it actually going to give you satisfaction and happiness? I don't know. Everybody's story is different. It's when you start realizing for yourself that actually the struggles, the hardship, the suffering, the adventure that we go on is what gives us something interesting to think about, to talk about. That's not a path of least resistance. That's a path that's full of resistance. And we may fail, or we may, it may not be the right path for us to go down at all, but very rarely is it wasted, because you're going to learn something from it.
And that's why I saw another saying which actually complement to what you have just shared about the resistant thing. So the path of the most resistance will turn into the path of innovation.
which is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Which I
because
think
when you're in
is true.
Oh yeah, because when you're in a fix, when you're in a difficult situation, you have to come up with a solution.
I remember years ago, my teacher, Dr. William Glasser, wrote a book called "Warning: Psychiatry Can Be Bad for Your Mental Health." It's quite interesting. So when he was teaching about choice theory psychology years then, he always have a lot of objections, a lot of people saying that it's bad because he doesn't go into advocating taking medicine. He want to look into getting into the root of the issue. At the same time, he also teach that psychology has to be easy. Everyone can use it and can help ourselves along the way. So when he first started that, he has a lot of resistance, getting people spitting on him and so forth. But after 40 years, before his passing, when he went on stage, he gets standing ovation. So what you mentioned about resistance, sometimes when you are passionate about what you want to do and you go out to do whatever that you need to do, ultimately at the end of the day, the outcome outweighs with the resistance as well.
Resistance 中文就是阻力啦，阻力。在生活上我们肯定很多时候都会碰到这样子的一个情况。那有些人我觉得是他们给他们自己就是有这方面的一个很习惯性的做任何事情呢，他们都会有这个所谓的很抗拒，也是一种比较。Do we have like the so-called inborn resistance when for example, we see someone, any changes, any new things, they always have that kind of resistance of, oh, no.
Yeah.
Not willing to change.
Yep. And that's because of what we were saying right in the beginning about the fact that, humans are pattern-seeking beings. We thrive on schedule. We thrive on knowing what's coming next because that's how we survive as a species. We absolutely right, Gigi, and we have this inborn aversion to change because at least if we're doing something we've always done, we know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
We can predict. But if we try something different, or someone's doing something that's out of the norm, we can't predict, and that gives us fear, like, subconscious, but it is a fear.
And I think the COVID situation, I mean, until now, for the past nearly 2 years, that this change word, CHANGE, has really pushed its limit in everyone's life. I think it's globally. Like, whether be it you want to change, you don't want to change, you have to change. It's like very simple, like going digital, going
Working
digitalized.
Yeah.
Working from home, going online, going more. You got to do a lot of study from home. And that's why, like, recently I took up the digital business. One of our module is actually agile mindset, which I was told apparently has been already used in a lot of big companies. I mean, having the agile mindset in the business nowadays, because our traditional business is always from top to down. Okay, you do this, okay, don't say no and just do it. But now having the agile mindset, that means, they're also doing changes mindset as well. That means you work as a group, you work as a team, you are very open to sharing, to changes and all that.
Exactly. So the agile mindset, as you're talking about, the agility of the mind, the agility of the species to not just be able to cope with change, but to welcome change, embrace change, and to actually, be the instigator of change is something that you have to practice. It doesn't come to us naturally. That is actually, Nathaniel, that's the last slide that I sent you, actually.
Okay, let me just go to the last slide.
Yeah, the difference between a pessimist and an optimist and a realist. So
this one.
Yeah. So a pessimist is someone who complains about the wind, and the optimist expects it to change or hopes for it to change. But the realist is the person with the agile mindset. The realist is the one who adjusts the sails. So an agile mindset is incredibly important because it helps you foster that notion that you are in charge of your destiny. You can change the course even if you cannot command the wind, right? There are always tools at your disposal to be able to change your course, whatever that may be.
The person with the most flexibility controls the system. Because with the flexibility to do many things, even in certain background, just like when you are given an opportunity to work in a different environment, and once you're able to be flexible enough and agile mindset enough to be able to fit into the role, you'll be able to control and manage the outcome that you want to be and make happy. I think about a few months ago, we talked about this basis that when you have basic needs for fun, freedom, and let's say in an environment, maybe like there's a video in Thailand, police officer on the street, he has a lot of fun need. So in order to create fun in an environment where you're only directing traffic, he will dance to the music.
Yeah. Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. He's still doing his job. He's just doing it in a slightly different way. And he's happy.
Yep.
And that's the kind of mindset I always try to inject to the young people, especially the school kids, the students. Sometimes it's very challenging, wanting them to really focus on their study. And to them, okay, playing games, they are so passionate about playing games. And then once they are put into a different situation, like facing a textbook, is that immediately you see the face change. So I actually sometimes have to mentally train them. Like, even for example, one of my students is very good in mathematics, but he disliked Mandarin. Okay, and I'm just the teacher that actually teach him Mandarin. I said, okay, since you like mathematics so much, and it's just like, all the square and the what and the plus and the minus and all that, and why not you just treat Mandarin, all these difficult words, is just like all the equations and all the subtract, minus, plus, and then you try to treat it like a game. It's going to be a very it's going to be a very challenging game, but treat it like a game. That's going to be very difficult and with different stages, and not like treat it like a Mandarin that you hate. I think that makes a little bit of difference, and I see the improvement from him actually, from 7 marks, 7 upon 100, and he got 41 upon 100.
Well done.
That's such a big gap. So I can understand that, because I used to hate mathematics because of my school, because of my subject teacher. Once it comes in, I will like, I just do one and then that's it.
You got to use your fingers and toes.
Yeah, so I really shut off. I'm not willing to change. And that's due to changes as well, because I don't want to change my perception of my teacher. And, you just get me 4 years of all failed and red marks. Yeah, which is not the ideal result that we want to get. Yeah.
Talking about mathematics, I remember a very old trainer of friend of mine who also happened to be in New Zealand, and he was sharing during his younger days when he was as the teacher. He went into a class and the students all hate maths. They can't memorize a certain formula at all. So the day he went into class, and what he did was totally different. He went in, let's basically go through a rhythm, certain words that he says. So say he tells a little bit story. So once there was a bee who flew over a root, and he went over. So he go through a certain sequence of that, and he gets the children to continue to do the same thing over and over again. And at the end of the day, he tell them, okay, now, do you remember the formula for the exercise? Say, what formula? Yeah, once there was a bee who flew over a root. So the whole sequence of it is actually a whole formula.
He make it interesting.
Correct. Yeah. So the person with the flexibility controls the system, and if what he's doing is not getting a result, he changed the way you go about doing it.
So I guess this change word is not only important for, I think it's important for everyone, even as a teacher. I think a good teacher, he knows how to change his style of teaching when it's needed in different situations, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, agreed. So, because I certainly now approach things in a little bit more of a compassionate sense, because I feel like maybe there's a little bit too much expectation on someone who is, modern and reading books about self-development. Sometimes people feel like they have to want to be open to change. And I just wanted to make sure that people know you don't have to. Sometimes some people are very happy with no change. And you know what? That is your evolutionary programming, and that is right for you. I think, if we're talking about the adults in your audience, a lot of people are going to find that there are two things that they're hung up on most is going to be issues with job satisfaction, goals when it comes to that kind of thing, and issues with family and relationships. So, going to family and relationships, and this spills over into work relationships. A lot of time we're talking about, okay, you're on this road. If you want to, and you've been doing the same thing over and over again, then if you want something different, to go on a different road. And it sounds so simple, but actually a lot of the time you have to go back into your past to figure out why it is that you react and act in the way that you do to your relationships before you're able to just go onto a different path. So for a while there, everybody was very interested in the 5 love languages, right? So if my love language is, acts of service, and my partner's love language is, words of affirmation, then, I can now see what he says is how he's expressing his love for me, and hopefully he can see that me making him a cup of tea every morning is my way of expressing love to him, and so on and so forth. And no. Okay. And that's
Okay.
really lovely, right? That's lovely. But that's showing us the showing what we do and say in positive lights, right? But it doesn't talk about the 5 not so lovely love languages, right? It doesn't talk about the fact that if you grew up with a critical father or a dismissive mother, that you may have been someone constantly working to getting that approval from them when you're growing up. So there's a big difference between being 6 years old and being 36 years old. But that child in you is constantly still seeking approval because you don't want to be dismissed by your boss. And so you do these ridiculous things to try and please them and please them and please them. But actually, you're just recreating situations that you are, and this is not that you're asking for trouble, but you are comfortable in that situation because that is a role that you grew up playing. Therefore, it is the path of least resistance for you because you just continue to play the role that you've always played. And unfortunately, people are not your mother and your father, so they're going to act differently towards you, whether they are going to embrace it or dismiss you or be critical or take advantage of you or whatever it is. But we seek that which is familiar, whether it's right or wrong for us. And so you'll find that people with their relationships, especially their partnering relationships, their husband or their wife, they tend to play out relationships that they saw in their childhood home, whether it's relationships between their mother and father or their relationship with their mother or their father. So even though you didn't like that your mother was dismissive, sometimes because you're familiar with how that feels, you will unconsciously, subconsciously seek out a partner who is dismissive to you. And you don't like it and you want things to change, but you don't realize that you actually have to go back and do things differently with your mindset from your childhood. You have to go back and you have to look into that again. Sorry, that might be a bit deep, but
Yeah, that's why human psychology comes in. You got to study a lot of things to go in depth.
Yeah. Because at times, if you look at it, like what Dr. Oliver mentioned about parenting, and at times certain children are raised by their primary caretaker, which may not necessarily be their parents. For example, orphans, they're raised in an environment where they are all orphans together in orphanage.
yeah.
Or let's say they are during certain period of time they've been sent to different homes, like the grandparents and so forth. So the primary caretaker became their grandparents, so they model after them. And the
Yeah.
same modeling can be carried forward where they can use it in their own relationships as well. So sometimes if let's say they have abusive grandparents, for example, they might end up beating up the other
Their
party
own
along the
kids.
way.
Yeah.
So they learn along
Yeah.
the way,
Yeah.
and they model along the way. So ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to relationship, is to look into whatever that you're doing. Is it serving them? Is it helping them to become better as an individual, or in their comfort zone, like what Dr. Oliver mentioned earlier, is that when they're so comfortable with what they are in, they just don't want to change.
That's right. Or they don't know they need to, right?
Yep.
You don't know that you're seeking out the patterns that you're used to. So if you go to
Yeah.
that first slide that I sent you, Nathaniel, that's a really good slide,
Okay.
whereby
This one.
we're seeing more and more research into this area between trauma bonding. So trauma bonding is where you actually bond with someone, okay? But because the bond is made over under emotional circumstances which are not ideal, yes, you are close to someone, but this is those relationships that is riddled with pain and suffering. That roller coaster that some people go through, where they love each other and then they hate each other, and they love each other and then they hate each other. And this is not just between husband and wife. This can be the relationship that you have with your kids. Where you're screaming at each other one minute, and then the next minute, you're going on a holiday together. And then a lot of people will just dismiss this as being, oh, that's just the way these relationships go. Actually, you're playing out emotional dysregulation because you haven't realized that you need to go back and see that the way you choose to bond with someone is based on bonding patterns from childhood. So a trauma bond is, someone who, you know, we all know this friend, right? That person who isn't happy unless they're in a relationship, or they spend their entire life talking about wanting to partner up with someone or couple up with someone. You know, that person where after a while it gets really, really quite boring after a while, because it's like, you know that you're your own person. You don't need to be married. You don't need to have a boyfriend to be cool or fun or happy. And that's someone who themselves didn't feel whole in their family because they always needed their mum or their dad, or they saw this played out in their mum and dad. We've already talked about that highs and lows, and that nervous system activation, that's that swinging between, like, you know, these dopamine rushes where you know, which is preceded by adrenaline rushes because you're fighting. And then when you give someone a hug after, it reinforces that dopamine rush, reinforces that what you just went through, that roller coaster, that's okay. Where you and I, well, the both of you and I know that it's generally not okay, you know, to have those sorts of relationships. And it's about control as well. You know, when you have one person telling the other person what to do, how to dress, what to say, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to, I have my space and I will hold space for you, and you have your space, and our spaces complement each other, and we work together and we bounce in and out of each other's space, and that's okay. You know, that's a far more healthy way to go about relationships. So, you know, if you're in, and these are for patients who, or for people who, that you in a long-term relationship with someone and things aren't working, and then you want to go see a counselor because you want to try something different, and that's fantastic. You know, and you're absolutely trying to get off the road that you're on, onto a different road. This is exactly what we're talking about. But sometimes you have to go dig deep into your past, because those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's true.
I agree. 打个比方说吧，我们通常都要以我们自己来做一个例子啦，会比较容易听得懂。打个比方说，好像我觉得我长大了之后，我才慢慢发现，在我的感情道路上 ，in my path of relationship, when I look back, oh, it's like I'm repeating actually what my parents my mom is dealing with, because I came from a single-parented family. So it's a lot of 没有安全感，英文怎么说？
Feeling of security, is it? Insecurity.
I mean, when I look back now, I know, oh, okay, why that happened during that past 30 years, through my relationship, is because of insecurity. It's because of, like, I am subconsciously imitating what my mom, my parents is actually doing.
Yes, that's exactly, because even though it made you upset, it hurt you or angered you or frustrated you, it's still a familiar feeling. It's the path of least resistance. You've done that over and over and over again. So you just continue to do that until you learn.
Break off. Have to break off.
Yes, until you learn you need to do that.
Yeah, and I only learned that when I was near 50.
Yeah. Yeah, so many of us take so long.
I totally cut it off, which in Chinese we said the 原生家庭, the formal family. Until you realize you have to cut off from what you have learned from the normal family. I mean, not, of course, the bad ones, okay, the bad habits. And then usually you have to get that mature to understand and to realize, oh, actually that was bad for me.
Yeah.
And I do not want to repeat it anymore.
Exactly. And that's such a hard decision. I cannot believe you did that, you know, because a lot of the time people will persist in families because they're family. And especially with Asians, you know, it's like the family comes first and all that kind of thing. But at some point, there is so much trauma in a family. There is so much bad energies that get carried down generation to generation to generation. There's almost nothing else you can do but cut it off, because you don't want to be perpetuating that horribleness to the next generation. You know?
Yes, and sometimes it's quite sad that you have to.
It's so sad.
I only realized that the last 2 weeks that I saw my mom lying on the sick bed, that I realized that and my mom is still not happy about her whole life, and that is a huge reflection that I do not want to be that someone.
Yeah.
And a lot of them said to say they either realize that during that last few moments, or the scariest is they don't.
They never.
Even
Exactly.
they never. And from what we see, it's pretty sad.
I mean, it's also normal for people who experience it, especially what you mentioned about parent and child, right? So there was a case I recall about 20 over years ago. One of my associates was handling it, an abusive relationship between husband and wife. So this particular lady had gone through 3 major relationships. The first one was an abusive boxer. So she was bleeding all over, and she decided to divorce him, marry a second one, which is a bouncer. So he was boxed up once again, and the third one was also pretty bad. So after a third relationship, he went through counseling, he went through therapy, and he realized that when, as a child, he always looked up to someone who can protect the family. May not necessarily be physical power, but someone who can protect the family, because he sees it in his family members. His parents are fighting all the time, and he longed for someone who can be there to be someone who's strong emotionally,
That's
physically.
exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So once she's aware of it, her mental state changes, a totally shift of paradigm, and realize, I may not necessarily need someone who's physically strong enough to box me around. I just need someone who is strong enough to balance the situation, handles the relationship, able to take care of me well enough, and that's fine. And subsequently, her relationship change, it becomes better because it's a shift of paradigm.
Yep, exactly. If whatever you're doing isn't serving you, or whatever it is that you're doing is not getting you to where you need to be, you need to change something.
Yeah.
And
Or sometimes you realize that it's not meant for you until a certain stage of your life. You realize that's not meant for you, and then there's still other choices, frankly speaking. Maybe for me is I realized that maybe the kind of love that I wanted it's not meant for me. I'm not going to get it. Even if I'm going to chase for it, it's not going to work anyway. Once I change my mind, I start to treasure my friends, my students, and love comes in many different forms. And things start to you start to be on the track, on the right path. When you realize that something is not meant for you, don't push it. There is still other choices which is meant for you.
A lot of time, a lot of people think that having a relationship is a fairy tale. You can see fireworks going around, things like that.
In the beginning.
So one of my teacher mentioned this before. When you look at relationship like fireworks, you will go up very fast and you will fade out very fast as well. So
and
learn
in Chinese,
to appreciate every moment.
And in Chinese word, I ever have conversation with a mentor, which is a monk, which is a high monk, and he said in Chinese word we call romantic is lang man. Lang in Chinese is actually wave. Man is actually cover. And he said if you always want lang man as in romantic, the wave will come and cover you. And every time you seek this kind of state of mind, it will always drown you. And I realized, then I realized,
But that's why those self-development courses are so important, because sometimes it's about figuring out who you are, why you react the way you do, why you act the way you do, because a lot of the time there's people don't have an awareness. I am constantly finding out new things about myself, and it's just incredible. Every time I find out something new, I'm like, that's interesting. And then you think to yourself, how did I not see that before? And after a while, you just have to go, you know what? The fact that I am still discovering things about myself is really interesting. I mean, I wish I did it earlier, but that's why those self-discovery courses, Tony Robbins and all that, all these can be really helpful, because it just makes you take pause and makes you think, makes you, take stock. And then you're able to start seeing a couple of gaps. And if there's a gap that you want to fill, that you want to change, then you have the opportunity to do it. As Jujian said, don't wait until your deathbed, because that's just too many people's stories, and it's just so full of sadness. All the people that you leave in your wake. When I say your wake, I don't mean your actual funeral wake. I mean in your past life, that you could have changed your relationship with them, could have changed the energy, could have made a more positive impact in someone else's life, just by having been open to the idea and possibility of change.
I'm going to show a short video, more of a light-hearted humor video after this. It's also relating to creativeness and change. So let me just show you the video. It's going to be quite humorous. Let me just show. It's actually based on a Thai advertisement. So let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
It's meant to be a little bit of light-hearted humor. Because
Interesting.
if what you're doing is not getting you the result that you want, change the way you go about doing it. So by playing music in the car to make sure you get a girl is another way.
But it doesn't mean that every time you change, you get the result you want.
That's right. That's a very important point.
That's
like
true.
The guys keep on changing the song.
Maybe this song, maybe that song, maybe next song.
It's still the same effect. At the end of the day, I think that's the beautiful part of life, lah. Huh? Although today we are talking about changes, whether you want to make changes, is change good for you or you don't need to change. I think it's very individual, like what Dr. Olivia says, and it's up to you. We are just mentioning it. I think it's up to you to explore, and that's why I call it. That's a beautiful part of life. When you really explore the change or not to change, I think indirectly you start to know more about yourself. A lot of time it's like, why I need to change, why I don't need to change. You start thinking.
Yeah. Sometimes in life, when we have our own philosophy in our mental paradigm when we were younger, it does not apply when we are older. See, so if we continue to hold on to the same belief system and utilize it in our older age itself, you might end up disrupting our life instead. So that's the point where you start looking into whether it's what you're doing getting you what you want. Whether are you going to change it or are you not? If you continue to go down a path of least resistance, like what Dr. Olivia mentioned itself, it may be comfortable, but it may lead to an outcome that may not be what you want.
Yeah. We will leave the action to our viewers. Maybe the next time they can tell us that they have made some changes, or no, I refuse to change. I'm not going to change. I mean, let our viewers tell us the answer and share the experience as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about comfort. So a lot of individuals who are very comfortable in their own skin, they will choose to be in whatever state that they're in. And they'll continue to go around the same loop over and over and over again. And there's a choice.
Yep.
We always have a choice.
Exactly. All right.
所以我们今天时间呢还有3分钟哈，就差不多。可是我们先看看好像钟明他刚才对just now 呢，钟明 mentioned about there's 条条大路通罗马，that means all road leads to Rome. That's another one. 这个是欲穷千里目，更上一层楼。
Let me try to find the one which is
唯有不断学习，面对障碍，才能真正的成长。
Oh, this one. Okay, sorry. Every road leads to Rome, right? Yeah.
Every road leads to Rome. 柳暗花明又一村。
Means what? Second part. 柳暗花明啊。
柳暗花明，它是一句成语啊。You will always see something new when you just turn, like, you know, the next corner. Sometimes you will realize something new.
And the other one that you mentioned earlier, which is what? This one, right? 钟明 say.
欲穷千里目，更上一层楼。We just need to continue learning and to face obstacles. And that's the time when we really grow and to get mature.
That's true. It's about choices and changes. 不是风动，不是什么，而是仁者心动。What does that mean?
OK， 不是风动，不是翻动，是仁者心动，就是 those with the heart 啦 ，that moves 啦 ，that moves. It's not the wind. It's the heart actually that moves.
So it's about compassion.
Yeah. Yes, about compassion. 这边我们还看到 Annie，OK，Annie， 还有 Angel Soon，早上好。所以这边大概跟大家就是看看还有哪一些朋友，刚才的 Kishon， 还有Joyce 和 Carol， 还有Lichin， 对。
I'm trying to find where are the text really too fast up. Okay.
通常都是说 hello hello hello， 对对对。
Okay.
Good morning everyone. Yep, just to inform everyone that
in July,
we will we'll turn into one episode every month, and that will be on last week of the month. 因为刚才有一些朋友问就是会在哪个星期天，那就是每一个月的最后一个星期天。And we are going to do it with Olivia's father, Dr. Ly. Yeah.
So you'll be coming on our show every last Sunday of the month, and we'll be sharing more insight as well.
是的。
Yep.
So where are you heading from now? Are you going out for some?
Yeah, going out now. My friends have been waiting for me.
Okay.
Okay. So thanks, Olivia, for the contributing to
You're
Power of Three.
No. Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
Continue to enjoy. Yep.
Yeah, I will
enjoy
do.
your holiday.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Have
holiday.
a great Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks for coming. Bye. So let me close the show by dedicating a song to all fathers that was written by Jiu Jian.
嘿，
Okay,
日
it's a
久
song.
见真情。
Okay, so that's a song that was written by Jiu Jian. So I'm going to share that song over the screen right now. And
Not just for father, but my father's picture is an insight. It's for everyone that you love.
Okay, so for everyone that you love. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So thank you everyone for coming, and we will see you all next week
是
with
下个星
Dr.
期天
Lee.
同样时间，然后之后
Same
呢，
time?
进入7月份的时候呢，就是每一个月份的最后一个星期天。
So from July onward will be the last Sunday of each month.
好的，
Okay.
谢谢大家，
Thank you
拜
very much.
拜。
Goodbye.
还记得那海边风中的约定，送我小小的贝壳是你。还记得那冬天温暖的关心，送我浅蓝色围巾是你。也许我总是让你们都生气，也许有一天突然断了音讯，有些话总是把它放在心里，偶尔唱歌给你听。日久见真情，岁月来证明，旷野上的星星闪烁着坚定。日久见真情，不换心不移，在手中的幸福，只为遇见你。还记得那条街说过的约定，向我挥挥手点头是你。还记得那秋天特别的用心，为我写下一首歌是你。也许我总是让你们都担心，也许有一天微笑在你梦里，有些人总是把它放在心底，偶尔到各种惦记。日久见真情，岁月来证明，荒野上的星星闪烁着坚定。日久见真情，不换心不移，在手中的幸福，因为有了你。日久见真情，岁月来证明，旷野上的星星闪烁着坚定。日久见真情，不换心不移，在手中的幸福，因为有了你。有一天会看到 日久见真情。